had your husband on the show, and people recognize the last name. And he, there I referenced another podcast that he had been on recently called "We Are the Easter People," and in there he actually he got into how the two of you had dated at one point, and you made clear to him, like, listen, I want us to be evenly yoked. There was a period where you both took a break, and he ended up finding himself, and it sounds like a lot of it had to do with seeds that you planted, and also got a chance to then water again when he came back into your life. And now you're in a very happy, loving marriage. I think that's such a cool, happy story. I don't know if you'd like to share a little bit about that. Like, what brought you to stick to your guns, so to speak? That's a very courageous thing to do.
Sure. So we met at 16 years old, working at summer camp on Dish Crew. It was a Christian summer camp, kind of in like the evangelical tradition. Nice. And then we started dating at the end of that summer, because you're not supposed to, if boys are blue and girls are pink or red, you don't make purple at camp. So and that's a rule for the campers and for the staff. So
follow the rules.
We waited until the end, and then we were dating. And when we came back years later, then it was like, oh, we were already together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So and camping ministry is wonderful, and we could talk about that too. But
sure.
Anyway, we met at 16. We started dating. We probably dated until I was 18. So and then we ended up breaking up in my sophomore year of college. I was like a youngling. I was 18 in my sophomore year. And I guess what happened was Brady was growing up in the Methodist Church, and I also had wonderful friends growing up who went to a Wesleyan church, but I don't think they were any particular denomination. And they showed me what it was like to be a Christian, even though I'm a cradle Catholic.
Right.
So they showed me what it was like to be a Christian in a different way, like a different type of Christian living, prayer, what ministry can look like, different ways of praying through music that were in their tradition. And they also were part of Young Life. I don't know if you know about Young Life, but that's like a youth group that's like across the nation. Okay. But it's much more, there's always like a Young Life leader who lives in your community, and then you go to camp with them in the summers, but you have like Bible studies all throughout the year and all this stuff.
Tradition, or?
It is, I think it's non-denominational.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I had like a wonderful foundation with that, but I was having trouble so I'm like coming alive as a Christian, attending Mass, and still doing all of the Catholic stuff that we have experienced in Western New York as part of our diocese in the past 30, 40 years. Sure. And I'm like having trouble figuring out how these go together. And if you talk to my mom, you'd be like, wow, this was such a like crazy time. She probably saw like, oh, this is like a crucial time, but like I'm like fighting. I would like come to her with Protestant apologetics for stuff, because I'm learning from Protestants, and I'd be like, why confession? And then she'd like went into the Bible that I had purchased for myself, and she like underlined like the passage, where and at the time I was like, how dare you go into my things, because I'm like a teenager.
Yeah, going through the angst.
Right. But she was just showing me like this is where Jesus gives the apostles the ability to forgive sins.
Right. Lose sin.
Yes. And whose sins you retain are retained, and whose sins you forgive are forgiven. At the same time, I always paid attention at during homilies, which I feel like I don't know why I was blessed with that, because so many of us, and I'm not going to say every time, but like so many of us, like we go into la la land very easily, and I still do this sometimes, but it like as a child I was always paying attention to the priest, so I'm like getting all this information, I'm like, I don't get it. And then at some point something just clicked where I realized I don't have to figure all of this out, like every single question, and like I don't have to, I should read the scriptures so that I'm not ignorant of Christ, but I don't need to go through and basically be my own theologian and do all the exegesis to figure it out. And that was like, oh, wow, that's so helpful. At the same time, one of my roommates in college, who was a non-denominational Christian at the time, offered me this book, and it was about, I guess, like the idea is like being sold out or surrendered to Jesus before you have a relationship with someone of the opposite sex. But it was for women in particular. So I was reading that and doing Bible study on my own, and I started praying the rosary every day. And I was taking the bus to one of our campuses that had daily mass, taking the bus early in the morning to go to daily mass.
You were on daily rosaries too back then?
I can't really...
Early college?
Yeah.
I mean, you were at least doing them. That's great.
Yeah. So this stuff was happening, and I realized that, like, I got called back to the Eucharist in a stronger sense of, like, okay, this is what's going on. So I felt like it would be really difficult for me if someone didn't, like, I was married to someone who didn't have the same understanding of the Eucharist as me, or who couldn't receive the Eucharist.
Got it.
So, yes.